It's not the events that happen to you that define you, it's the meaning that you give those events. And we're all faced with challenges, disappointments, unexpected turns, but what really separates people who rise, because once you begin to question your perception, when you question your perception, you really start to reclaim your power, realizing that your emotions don't come from events, they actually come from the meaning you give them. So next time you're upset, try pausing and saying, what story am I actually creating right now from this event? That one question alone can change your entire trajectory of your day, your relationships, your business. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, but if you keep saying, I'm always the one who gets overlooked, or I'm bad with money, or I just can't catch a break, your brain will start to, over time, prove that that happens. It'll start to form your identity around it. But the opposite is also true. When you tell yourself, I'm a problem solver, every challenge prepares me for success. All right, welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. George Wright III with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. Today, I want to talk with you about something that can completely change the way you see your life. Because it's not the events that happen to you that define you, it's the meaning that you give those events. And we're all faced with challenges, disappointments, unexpected turns, but what really separates people who rise, from, bad experiences, are the ones that don't just chalk it up to luck, talent, or timing. It's the ones that interpret the events in their life to mean something. So, when life happens, there's really two types of people. You've probably heard this before. One type believes things happen for them and that every event has a reason, a purpose, a lesson. They choose that route. And the other people believe that it just is chance. It's unfair, out of control, random. And the difference between those two mindsets will really determine everything about your success, your happiness, your peace of mind. I've found this in my life. So today I want to walk you through just a few key ideas that can help you to shift from reacting to life to reframing your life. Because once you learn to control the meaning, you can really control the outcome. So the first thing let's talk about perception, because perception is a lens through which we view reality. It colors everything, our emotions, our actions, even our future decisions. And, think about it this way. Two people can experience the exact same event and walk away with a completely different life view because of how they perceive it. One person loses their job and thinks my life's over. The other person thinks this is my chance to finally do something I love. And the event's the same, the outcome's not. But because perception creates the emotion and your emotion drives your behavior, it's very important that you see things as they are, not as you think they are. You've got to make sure that you're not putting an unfair slant on events that happen in your life. So when something happens that feels unfair or painful, pause and ask yourself, am I really seeing this clearly, or through a lens of fear and frustration or my ego? Because once you begin to question your perception, when you question your perception, you really start to reclaim your power. It's pretty empowering to know that you are taking control of your perception. So now let's dig a little bit deeper. Events in life are neutral. They're just facts. A deal falls through, a relationship ends, someone betrays you. These are just actual events. It's the meaning you attach to those events that creates your actual emotional world. And if you tell yourself, and remember, emotions are driving your behavior. So if you tell yourself, I failed because I'm not good enough, you'll feel defeated. If you tell yourself, the experience taught me how to be stronger, same situation, you're going to feel empowered. And it's all about how can you change your perception to affect your emotions in the right way. Same event, two completely different emotional states and realities. This is where emotional intelligence really begins. Realizing that your emotions don't come from events, they actually come from the meaning you give them. So next time you're upset, try pausing and saying, what story am I actually creating right now from this event? That one question alone can change your entire trajectory of your day, your relationships, your business. I mean, speaking of stories, that brings us really to this other idea you've probably heard before. What is the story that you tell yourself? And, you've heard this before, but let's take it in this perspective of filter. Every single one of us walks around with an internal narrative running in the background, an internal story. It's the story of who we think we are, who we think, what we think we deserve, how we explain our past. And over time, these stories become our identity. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, but if you keep saying, I'm always the one who gets overlooked, or I'm bad with money, or I just can't catch a break, your brain will start to, over time, prove that that happens. It'll start to form your identity around it. But the opposite is also true. When you tell yourself, I'm a problem solver, every challenge prepares me for success, I learn every time I fail, you're going to start showing up differently. And that story, it starts to create your standard, because many of us, or at least most people I know, don't have don't have fewer problems than anybody else. We all have the same problems, or the number of problems. We just, the people that are the most successful change the story that they're telling themselves about that problem. Does that make sense? And once you understand that you're the author, not the victim of your story, you can begin to edit and write and create the version that you want to have. You can create the version of the story that you're telling yourself. So this kind of leads me to the next point I want to talk about, which is controlling the frame if you want to control the outcome. In life, a lot of times we're trying to control outcomes, but not the frame we put that helps drive that outcome, if that makes sense. So we can't always control what happens in our life, but we can always control the frame we view it through. And framing means choosing how you interpret the experience. So you can frame a setback as proof that you're not ready, or as proof that you're being prepared. You can frame criticism as rejection or feedback, so you can grow stronger. And when you control the frame, you will end up controlling your emotional state that you live in. So here's a simple process that I use. Step 1, pause. Don't react immediately to things. Even if you do at times, just try to remind yourself to first pause. Second, ask the question, what else could this mean? Because you've already set up a dialogue. What else could this mean? And then third, reframe it. Choose a meaning that empowers you rather than limits you. So no matter what, pause, question what it could mean, and reframe. For example, instead of saying I failed, say I learned something valuable. Language matters, because it frames how your mind, when you frame your language, it frames how your mind's going to interpret. So once you learn to reframe consistently, and that's the act you do, you pause, you question, you reframe, life's going to start to feel less like it's attacking you and more like it's training you. And this leads perfectly into this concept that, Tony Robbins talks a lot about. He says, meaning equals emotion, emotion equals action, and action equals your destiny. Let me say that again. This is a really powerful thought from Tony Robbins. He says, meaning, in other words, the meaning you give events equals your emotion. And your emotion equals your action. How you emotionally feel, that's what you're going to do. And action equals your destiny. It's a simple but very profound formula. The meaning you give an event determines how you're going to feel about it. And how you feel about it changes your actions. And what you do is going to ultimately create your results and your destiny. So if you want to change your life, you've got to start not with your actions, but with your meaning that you attach to everything that forms your emotions, which dictate your actions. And in business, this might mean viewing setbacks as setups for comebacks. In relationships, it might mean viewing conflict as communication rather than confrontation. So every time you shift the meaning, you shift your emotion. And every time your emotion shifts, you're going to change your path in life. And that's the real secret to resilience. And that's where most people either spiral down or level up. Because resilience through reframing can be a powerful tool for you. Now, resilience isn't about never failing. It's about it's about how quickly that you bounce back from failure, if that makes sense. And the fastest way to bounce back is through reframing. Now, when something goes wrong, ask yourself, how can I learn from this? What might this be preparing me for? And reframing will help you to turn adversity into advantage. And that's where gratitude comes in. And that's the ultimate reframe is gratitude. Gratitude will shift you from scarcity to abundance almost instantly. It says, even though this hurts, I'm thankful for what it's teaching for me. Or I may not have what it takes yet, but I want and I need to grow. The moment you practice gratitude, fear will lose all its grip on you. You move from being a victim to a creator, a reactive to a proactive person, from powerless to powerful. And the most successful and fulfilled people in the world have mastered this one thing. They interpret everything through the lens of growth and gratitude. And that means nothing is ever wasted. Nothing's ever a bad thing. Every rant, every setback, every delay, it just carries some meaning that's going to serve you. And if you choose to see it that way through this filter of gratitude, it's going to empower you to go to a whole new level. So here's my closing thoughts as we kind of finish up here. I want you to challenge yourself this week. Take one situation in your life right now, something that feels frustrating or unfair, and ask yourself, what else could this mean? What if this situation is setting you up for something great? What if it's developing strength, patience, or creativity? You can't always choose the events in your life, but you certainly can choose the meaning. And if that choice lies, with gratitude, it's going to be empowering. And being able to choose, it will determine your freedom, your fulfillment, and your future. So remember, wealth, success, happiness, it all begins in your mind. And it's not the events, it's the meaning you give them. And I hope that that's a topic that will bring you some value this week. Think of it as a challenge. Challenge yourself this week to catch every time you start to tell the story or tell the frame, question that frame and reframe it in a way that's empowering or powerful for you. So that's my challenge for today. I hope you have an amazing week this week. We have some awesome stuff coming up, and I appreciate you being part of the Daily Mastermind. In fact, I would love it if you would share this episode, but it would mean even more to me if you would hit me up on the Daily Mastermind, Facebook, Instagram, email me, and let me know what you're working on. What are you winning at? What are you struggling with? What can I do to help you? That's why I started the Daily Mastermind, so that we could together unleash your potential. It's never too late to start living the life that you're meant to live if you just start taking action. And that's my message for today. So have an amazing day, and I'll talk with you more tomorrow.